Today we are going to be talking about one of the components of Dr. Hanscom's work, and it's part of what he calls dynamic healing. And dynamic means, we're always going, we're always moving, nothing ever stays the same, even if we wanted it to. Things are turning over, cells are, regenerating, and our body is just always shifting. So dynamic healing, it's something that's really practical, and we can talk about this and how we can move through our day with less stress in our body. Now, wouldn't that be just lovely to have some real tools that we can do? And this is how we can even walk through our day with less stress in our body when our circumstances haven't changed as much as we want them to. So it's meeting ourselves where we are, but how do we have less stress with these things that we're going through? Because again, we've talked about this, it's never going to change. There's always going to be something in our life which is going to be a challenge or something unexpected or, something beautiful. The good thing is life is a mystery. We don't know always what's right around the corner. And we think of that as like, something amazing could be happening also. It can be, another way to think about that. But we spend a lot of time, as we, definitely can admit, trying to fix what's happening out there. We're trying to have this leverage in how our brain and body will respond to things. But today we're going to build on this work and this new concept that our body's stress response, our fight or flight chemistry, isn't just coming from what's happening around us. It's also from the interaction between us and our environment. So what we take in, that's one of the first parts. How our nervous system is functioning, what state are we in as we're taking this stuff in? And how we're responding in the moment to what's happening. These are all elements of what shapes our physiology. So we've already realized that when someone might embarrass us, we blush. That's our physiology. Or something negative happens and we get angry. That's going to change our physiology. We're going to have more adrenaline and more, cortisol. And so instead of trying to control everything, we're going to begin to see how we can shift how we interact with our day. So, and we can do that through these three key components. And so the first one, as I mentioned, is input. What we're uploading in our brain every moment, every day. Everything that we're taking in that is affecting our nervous system. So what we read, when we become the compulsive fixers, going on Reddit or, I'm sure we've all done some of these, Facebook, or taking in every study on long COVID or ME/CFS or pain, what we watch, if we're compulsively even watching recovery stories or, podcasts, we're spending so much time in that fix it mode that it's really, I think we all get into that because we want to get better. It's a natural thing that we do. We want a little bit of level of control. But sometimes we notice that we're spending so much time in that remember our brain has said, gosh, she's spending so much time on this. There has to be something, or he, seriously wrong. Seriously fundamentally broken, that they're not out enjoying their life. They're in fix-it mode 24/7. So how can we protect this body, this mind? Well, I know one way. Let's create more symptoms. Let's create more of this physiology that will protect them. So another thing is, even in the input that we're talking about, it's not only what we're watching, what we're reading, it's also who we're spending time with. And we sometimes forget about that. Are we always around the negative Nellies that see everything, complaining all the time and, being a little more negative or asking us a million questions? Well, what's wrong with you? When are you going to get better? The person that is anxious, that wants to know about us to like get some level of control in their life or make them ease. And that is affecting our physiology, whether we, notice it or not. So all the things that we're focusing on, and uploading, and what are those things, so if we're constantly reading about symptoms, researching, scrolling for answers, our brain is being fed those signals of threat, sometimes all day long. We might even read a story about someone else, but it's still we're gonna compare like, oh yeah, it took them this long. I mean, even when I was doing the things that other people were doing, when I would watch the recovery stories and I'd be like, cold plunging, got them better? Hey honey, we gotta go buy a cold plunger like immediately because that got somebody else better. But again, I'm not realizing that my threat physiology is staying in like, that hi Ming-Nang, staying in that that negative place. So, and don't forget something simple as what we're watching as a violent show or something really intense. Our nervous systems are, as we know, sensitized. So what we used to be able to watch Halloween 2, 3, 4, and 5, and Freddy Krueger. Right now, that is being seen again as something that is another form of threat. So we're trying to notice that conversations, can be draining or they can feel intense. And even the way, don't forget that we speak to ourselves is another input. Your brain's absorbing all of this. Our nervous system is responding accordingly. So part of the healing is gently becoming aware of all of this and asking, what am I exposing my brain to? And is it helping me feel safe? Or is it keeping me in threat? And so when we notice what's coming in, I had to give up the action shows that I used to like a lot, or stop watching the same shows that my husband would love to watch because they weren't serving me. Something as simple as that, it just didn't feel good, didn't feel right anymore. Believe it or not, watching the Boston Celtics because I cared about who would win. And, it just was like, it got me too activated. Like, whereas I used to thrive on that, it also felt draining to watch 4 quarters of an intense play. So it was strange, but for a while, I can go back to it now, but for a while it was like, no, I might even watch the last 10 minutes because then I could get a little of the action, and that's the most exciting time anyway. And I try and come at it with a sense of, it doesn't really matter who wins. I'm happy for both sides. So, that's when we can really slightly shift things that are more supporting the input. So more supportive people. Who are the people that are like really bring some, joy and lightness to my life? So maybe some more neutral or uplifting content, but maybe it becomes nature shows or, something about beautiful feel-good stories, whatever it is. Creativity is just neutral. Rest is neutral, moments of joy. So we're just giving our brain a break from the constant information. And we don't realize how powerful that can be. That's the first component. The second component is our nervous system itself, the baseline state, which we're really trying to get to. Because if our nervous system is dysregulated, everything's going to feel more intense. So it's about lowering your overall reactivity. And sleep's a big one. Because when we don't get enough sleep, let's face it, we see the world through these really, tinted glasses. It's just like everything feels heavier and harder. Our brain is not operating on full. And, it just can really interrupt our nervous system, and it makes us just feel exhausted. So prioritizing sleep, however that looks for you, doing that sleep hygiene, melatonin, working with your doctor, this is foundational. The other part is with the nervous system is nutrition. Eating regularly. Sometimes we get, like I had MCAS, and sometimes there's food allergies or whatever come up with this. So sometimes there's fear with food. Either not having, feeling like we're having enough of it or can digest it, or that we're gaining enough weight or too much. And it's just really great to know what relationship we have with food, and allowing our body to feel nourished and safe. So if we have to go see a nutritionist or create a new, or sometimes it looks like Chelsea the other day, one of our people, that came, she was like, I just said, what would happen if I tried this food that I was, doctors or nutritionists have said, oh, that might not be, sometimes it can be like, I feel like having this. What is that going to be like? So it's not having this real fear with food. And sometimes we've conditioned ourselves to that. Anybody who's had the stomach flu after eating a particular food is gonna for a little while say, oh, it was that. We conditioned ourselves to it. It's not that pizza actually was it. It just happened to be at the same time. So if we do have these fears, we could maybe look at those also. And the other thing is, the last part of this is movement. And this is not pushing, not forcing. It's kind of like what we did yesterday, the practice of visualizing it and reintroducing it so it's safe. Just gradually, even if we have to look at it first by just visualizing ourselves doing it with ease and safety, doing something very small, getting towards it, and then building the trust with your body again. Small steps, supportive steps. This tells our brain every time that I'm okay. And the third component, the final component, is output. What do we do in the moment when stress shows up? Because it will. Your mind will race. Your body will tense. You'll feel pulled into it. And this is where our tools come in, the ones that we practice on Monday, and you can see and write down the ones that have felt good for you, the ones that seem to register with your nervous system. So it could be one of the types of breath work that we do. Hands cupping, left nostril breathing, alternate breathing, the square breathing, the diaphragmatic breathing. It could be humming, one of those practices that we do. Maybe that feels good for you. Could be something somatic, rocking. What is the thing? Could be putting music in it, could be taking a walk. Awareness even. Simple touch. Active meditation is when we've did on Monday. It's about, noticing when we're ruminating and going into a sense. So all of these things can directly shift your physiology in the moment from threat to safety. You're not waiting for your thoughts to change. you're actually changing your state. So those are the three components. Input, what you take in, nervous system, your baseline, and output, what you do in the moment. And now we're going to do a practice to actually experience what it's like to not just hear this, but feel and live this. So go ahead and get comfortable, whatever that looks like for you. As always, you can close your eyes, or you can just soften your gaze. And start by taking some slow breaths in and longer, drawn out breaths out. Just let your body settle here. Notice that you've got some support underneath you, holding you, keeping you safe. Really grounding you into this present moment. So as you breathe in and out, knowing that this anchor is also here if you lose concentration, which will probably happen at least a few times. So we'll begin with a visualization. Just imagine yourself waking up in the morning. Before reaching for your phone, before checking the news or social media, you pause. You take a breath. You might lie down or just sit up quietly. And just bring attention to your breath. Right here, you're choosing your input. The breath, the feeling of the surface. You might look outside and see the sunlight. You might look around your space and notice something beautiful. You might listen to a guided meditation or some just sounds around your space. You're choosing your input. And now imagine getting out of bed, moving slowly, stretching gently, maybe even taking one step outside. Feeling the air, the light. This is supporting your nervous system. And imagine moving through your day. Eating when you feel hungry. Drinking water and staying hydrated. Allowing your body to feel nourished and safe. And now imagine something happens. A stressor, a thought, a sensation, and your mind starts to race. And this time, you notice it. I'm activated. And instead of getting pulled into it, you pause. You take a slow breath. Maybe you hum softly, or bring awareness into your body. Maybe putting your hands together, having your hands on your face. Maybe you gently sway, or take in some music, or even look around at something in your space, really examining it. And you feel your system begin to settle. That's your output. Now continue on with your day. And each time something arises, you notice. You pause. You separate. You shift. You get out of your head and into your body. You support your system. So you're not stuck. You're responding. And so by evening, you've had a more calming, a more full, a more present experience. And every time you've done a little practice, a breath, a pause, a separation, you're moving toward updating the message in your brain that things are safe instead of threats. And you're working with your threat physiology, creating more of the helpful hormones. And these are just a few practices. There's many, many more, and we will talk about them. If there's a stronger emotion and how we can use expressive writing or acting it out, those things. But this is just to give you an idea of how dynamic healing works. And if you can notice how it feels, even in this visualization, and if anything shifted for you even slightly, you can carry this with you. And it doesn't work perfectly. It just works by small, repeated moments. You begin to choose your input a little more wisely. You support your nervous system as much as you can. You use tools when you need them. Our brains are always learning and always updating. This is the most helpful part and the most hopeful part. So the question really becomes, what does my day look like? What am I practicing every day? And not with pressure, but as it becomes part of living. Because this is what's going to strengthen your brain. And the more you practice safety, the more your system begins to believe that you're okay. And that's where healing really builds. One moment, one choice, one little tool at a time. So let's come back to our breath. Again, noticing that the breath is what connects our mind, heart, and body, making us whole. And when you're ready, just opening your eyes and coming back to this space. Namaste.